So with respect to your career, right? How did you get into this role, and what was your career like? Like, how did you plan to get into this role? Did you have experience with, say, probably SAE events, and was that a starting point? How did you get in?
I did my undergraduate degree at Oxford Brookes University in motorsport engineering. I didn't actually partake in Formula Student at the time because it wasn't a fundamental part of the degree course back then. We're going back nearly 15 years now, so things have changed quite a lot, obviously, since then. But yes, I did my degree. I passed that with a first, and then took a position at Jaguar Land Rover, so working in electrical engineering. So it was actually a little bit away from what I wanted to be doing in terms of vehicle dynamics and chassis engineering. That was in part due to the fact it was 2009. We just had the global recession that had happened, so obviously the opportunities were quite limited. So I took a role that was heavily focused in simulation using MATLAB and Skill-Lync, with the basis of that would then give me a lot of transferable skills that I could use at a later date to move into a role more focused on chassis engineering and vehicle dynamics, which is ultimately obviously what happened. During my time in electrical engineering, I also did a part-time master's degree in vehicle dynamics at Coventry University. So that kind of filled in the gap, if you like, between doing my bachelor's and ultimately getting a role in that sort of area. And then after about 4.5 years working in electrical engineering, doing a few different roles, so some simulation-based, some more project management, and some sort of systems engineering, which obviously gave me a lot of different skills and experience. I moved then into chassis engineering, where I took this role predominantly developing simulation methods for active suspension systems. And then, having done that for the best part of 5 years, I decided it was time to get back to being more hands-on with the product, hence moving to a rival to become vehicle dynamics engineer, predominantly looking after the vehicle dynamics for the van platform. Great.
Was your undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering or electrical engineering?
So it was titled motorsport engineering, but it was effectively a mechanical engineering degree with 1 or 2 modules that were more specific to sort of automotive and motorsport applications.
Great. And from what you said, looks like you had your first dip at MATLAB and Skill-Lync probably at your first job, or even before in undergrad.
Yeah, we did a tiny bit in my undergrad degree, but it was very, very small. I think there was one module that used a bit of MATLAB scripting and another one that used a small amount of Skill-Lync modelling. But in by and large, yes, I learned how to do that when in my first role.
Great. And how helpful was that to get into vehicle dynamics domain or probably the chassis engineering domain?
I'd say very helpful. It definitely opened the door for me moving into that role within chassis engineering, because they needed somebody with simulation and modelling experience. I would say since then I've also developed MBS modelling experience and things like Adams and Simpac, so it's not just 1D modelling, but I think having that whole range is very important. I mean, for me, MATLAB itself I find it a very, very powerful tool. There's so much that you can do with it, whether it's modelling, analysis, sort of tool development, things like that. So I think it's a very worthwhile tool for a lot of engineers to use.
And since you manage a bigger team, when you hire engineers, what do you look for in these engineers?
It depends on what the role is that I'm hiring for. So depending on whether it's I'm looking for like a junior engineer that's just finished a degree or somebody with a few more years experience, obviously it varies a little bit. But I guess the one thing that's common is that beyond them just having good technical background, it's their attitude, it's their willingness to learn, their willingness to think for themselves. I like to think that if I'm managing people, I don't need to be telling them every day, do this, do that, do something else. I want them, I'm hiring them to bring skills and experience into my team, and effectively for them to tell me what they should be doing. Obviously, it's a two-way street, but that's the sort of thing that I'm looking for, is that they're going to be quite independent thinkers rather than just expecting me to dictate.
Kind of tracking this question to the next level, right? In that case, say for example, if you were right now an undergraduate engineer or graduated and are looking to get into the vehicle dynamics or suspension or steering kinematics domains, what would your advice be to say yourself 15 years back in order to kind of go to the pathway that you did right now?
So I think probably in terms of kind of what you were doing during your degree and perhaps what sort of roles you apply for, there's probably two things I definitely recommend. So firstly, former student, if you can get involved in former student, do so. It's a great opportunity to get some hands-on experience, actually trying to engineer, suspension systems and things like that. So definitely try to get involved in that. The second thing is, when you're getting to the point of wanting to apply for jobs, I strongly advise people to try and approach companies that have graduate schemes going. So I've spent a lot of time working at Jaguar Land Rover that has a very big graduate scheme, usually takes about 300 people a year. And what that does is it gives people that stepping stone from a degree into professional work. So for 2 years you're not really given a dedicated role within the business. What you do is you do several placements around the business. You learn a lot about how the entire business works. And then you come back to what they call your home department, which if obviously you're looking to do chassis engineering or vehicle dynamics would be that department, bringing all of that experience and knowledge you've picked up over those 2 years into a dedicated role. So I think it's a very good way to sort of step into the professional world.